The sale of public land by government departments to reduce the debt burden is not uncommon in the UK. In 2018, Network Rail sold off most of its property in a deal that amounted to $1.46 billion. In what appeared to be a win-win deal, opposition from the original small business was being ignored. One scary fact is 1% of the population control half of the country's land. Most of them are enterprises and overseas companies. For the public-owned land, it's only 10.6%. Let us zoom in London. We can see the land owned by the private nearly the same to the land owned by the public. So how did the public lose their land? We can see since 1979, a large amount of about 10% of the entire UK land have been sold to the private sector. The privatization of public land may have been carried out as a project by the government, implied by the continuous land disposal by the departments like NHS and local authority. One interesting thing is that around one-fifth of Parliament and approximately 30% of Conservative MPs are landlords. The government claims that the market can make public land work better, but is that the case? Taking house as an example, a large amount of public land has been sold to the private sector for housing, but this large volume of land purchase doesn't mean improved housing shortage. Compared to market housing, we can see the number of affordable housing is much smaller. Private land developers are also invisibly influencing the distribution of green spaces. Data shows a strong correlation between population, income index, and ethnicity. A mostly white population have much more green space than minority ethnic persons. Also, the wealthy people have better access to the green spaces. Public lands are supposed to provide public interest, but in the market-driven model of land development, the public interest has to give in private revenue. As implementation, a new type of public space appears, which is POPs. POPs mean privately owned public space. There are 54 POPs in London, covers an area over 40 acres, like King Cross and Canary Wharf. The most typical example of POPs is Canary Wharf. As one of the first appearing POPs, the change of its ownership shows how the government gave away the right to developing land to private sector, and it means the land owner has 100% of power to decide what things can happen. In fact, most people are not aware of the differences between POPs and the public space. Comparing the reviews about POPs and public space, it seems that public space are more related to leisure, while the POPs are more related to consumer behavior. However, the public have no biased feeling about the differences between POPs and the public spaces. Then we examine the reviews about POPs again, and we find a particularly high frequency of comments addressing consumer behavior, especially complaints about high prices. And that is the point. The landlords are leading our behaviors to create revenue for them, but not providing public interest. Let us zoom in Canary Wharf again. We can see when you own the land, we also have the power to tell people what to do. POPs is not real public spaces. Only when the public own land, the land is more likely to serve the public better. What can we do to create our public space? We got two existing models. The first one is Community Land Trust, short for CLT. CLT are set up and helping people acquire land for developing, especially affordable housing. The key to the model is the ownership of land. Given that the goal of providing certain amount of social housing, local authorities are more willing to sell public and to the CLT at a much more prices. Once CLTs owns the land, they can start to construct affordable housing. The housing price will be lower than certain portion of local average income level. One important thing is, once the property is owned by the CLT, it is only allowed to be sold to another CLT, working as asset lock. We can see a successful case in Bristol. The CLT model provides us useful experience on a system to protect land not to be sold to private sectors. However, difficulties in finding land resource and funding for operation and maintenance stop CLT expand scale for this project. Another model is Meanwhile Space. Meanwhile Space is an organization to capture the costs and turn them into opportunities to create social and economic value by becoming the tenants of vacant properties. When Meanwhile Space become tenants, they will start to redecorate the vacant building or land, then renting affordable space with flexible terms and support to thrive or fail, to seed and startups development stage business at acceptable price. The time frame of one project will last for 28 days to 5 years. There are 3 scenarios after the end of the lease. First one is the landlord take back the property. Second is motivated by the province record. The site is likely to become permanent commercial area. The last is the government will have new planning on the site. Learning from the Meanwhile Space, we can extract a well-operated business model on redeveloping vacant land. But the biggest problem hidden behind the model is ownership. Since the landlord owns the property, tenants are facing the risk of being kicked out. Extracting the managed system from CLT and business model from Meanwhile Space, our proposal is going to help the community acquire and develop land. Working as alternatives, our proposal will show what if network will transfer the land to community instead of selling them to private developers. We choose a site in Tower Hamlet for experiment. From the diagram, we can see most of our sites, including the arches, is owned by Red Network Rail. So the first stage will be land acquisition by negotiating with Network Rail and TfL. These two public bodies, the ownership of our site can be transferred to CIC, Community Interest Company. A CIC is a special type of limited company which exists to benefit the community rather than private shareholders. We can see in Crosby Reservoir, local residents successfully reopened a village pub as a CIC. In our proposal, the member of CIC will be representatives from different bodies of society, space provider like Network Rail, decision maker, the actor who provides constructing approval like local authorities, beneficiary, mostly local residents. These members will together elect the board of the CIC, which is the enabler, the actor who involves in every aspect, from activation to maintenance, founder, like the London Community Foundation, supporting the CIC to cooperate with idea generator, like architects, to design the idea for the use of the space. Therefore, the component of the CIC in the site will be representatives from Network Rail, TfL, the Tower Hamlet Council, community organizations, owners of art shops, and local residents. The right of each member is equal. After the CIC has been set up, a survey on the site will be needed. Through the survey, the CIC can identify issues and come up with corresponding planning. Our target site is situated in the high levels of gentrification area, implying from the influx of wealthier households. Following by this is a commercial facilities with high-priced commodities. However, residents around the site are mostly bandaged with low income level. They are suffering from unemployment due to lack of skills, especially female. Therefore, in our site, the planning needs to respond to the issue of female unemployment and the risk of gentrification. When the planning gets approval, we can move to the second stage, improving landscape. The key to this stage is co-design progress, leading by the architects. We develop a platform to collect ideas from different actors. This web page shows the site.
This is Jim. I'm the manager of Network Rail. TfL owns lots of land, but they are underutilized. I hope there would be more services for passengers passing.
Mark, an officer of the local council. We have received related complaints, so we hope to add more childcare facilities in this site. See, I have been living here for 5 years, but there is no suitable place for me to exercise and entertain. It would be better if more recreational facilities could be added.
I'm Jack. I'm a retail store owner, and the rent of the previous space is very high. I hope to have a convenient place for me to open a store.
In this stage, using recycled materials will help us to reduce the cost and will be entrusted by our catalog. Meanwhile, vulnerable groups like unemployed female will be given priority for employment. Once the landscape has been improved, we can start to apply a model based on the outcome of co-design. Female, the CIC will cooperate with the community organization or Somni Trust. Somni Trust will recruit candidates and offer skill training in one of the arches. Also, childcare services will be offered. Meanwhile, model for portable markets will be applied. These models and the arches are provided by the CIC. The renting price of them will be 60 to 70% of the average local income level. Also, the tenants need to follow certain obligations. Machine for business need to be carried by tenants themselves, but they can also apply for funding from the CIC. The time frame of this stage will be 3 to 5 years in order to create a good business atmosphere. Once the temporary market achieved success after negotiating with the tenants, we can turn temporary market to permanent commercial area. There are already similar cases existing in London, like the Elephant and Castle pop-up. Then we move to the last stage of our proposal, long-term strategy. In the stage, we can see the previous abandoned site has been successfully transformed into the space that serves the local people, since the land is owned by them. Scanning through the property owned by Network Rail and TfL, we find some potential sites. These sites have similar conditions, and we believe we can apply and implement our proposal in these sites.